So our technical difficulties have been resolved, and I'd like to thank those that are on the teleconference line for sending in their questions. When we get to the panel discussion portion, I'll make sure that I read the questions individually. We received at least 5 or 6, so I want to make sure I get to those. As we get started again, we're going to go back to the legislative update, and I'd like to introduce again Andrew White, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the legislation and some of the projects that are taking place outside of CalPERS that affect pension and reform and that type of thing. So welcome, Andrew.
Thanks. Thank you. So I was so exciting the first time. There was a clamor. Come back, do more. So there was a question that came in over the email, as I understand, on AB 963. Has everyone heard of this? Really? Awesome. So I'm not going to be able to provide a lot of information, but I can tell you a lot about the stuff around it. It was sponsored by STRS. So in the afternoon, when they do their legislative update, really grill them. Like, why are you doing this, and what do you think you're doing? In general, the bill created some greater clarification about what's a STRS covered position, and then in doing so, what's a PERS covered position for school employers. And my understanding is that this is more geared toward administrators that may be considered partially certificated or something like that. But from a PERS point of view, we didn't really dive too deep on this bill because, in general, the way the PERL looks at school positions is if it's not certificated, we cover it, and so it's really up to STRS to figure out what positions are theirs or not. And so this bill was sponsored by STRS to clarify what members are theirs, and then because we're an amazing retirement system, we just take everybody else. Okay. So it was signed by the governor, and like I said, if you have more detailed questions, including the person online, really grill the STRS person. AB 963. Okay. So yes. Oh, okay. Do you have a question?
Certificated in PERS covers it.
Yes, in general. Yes. I don't want to get too crazy with a blanket statement, but that is generally how the PERL looks at it. The way the PERL is written, it basically says if it's certificated, it STRS, under the assumption that if it's not, it's ours. Yes.
You have a question in front. Make sure everyone uses the microphone. Thank you.
Francis from Laco. And this might be something that Brad might want to answer. What CalSTRS looks at as credible compensation is based on what is credible service. And one of the definitions of credible service is they have to be performing specific duties, but they also have to have a permit, certificate, or credential to do those duties. If the permit, certificate, or credential is missing, then it's not considered credible service. So technically you could have a teacher teaching children considered classified because it's missing that piece. And this is a more commonplace practice with charter schools. And that was a question that I presented earlier this week to Emily and don't have a response yet. So.
Yeah, and Emily's, that's her area of expertise. I totally see where you're coming from. I'll have to take that one back to home base, though, and do a little research before I answer. I don't want to tell everyone the wrong answer based on my opinion. So.
Do you want me to make the wrong answer?
Yeah, yes, please do. Please do.
No. Yes.
Is it true PERS is more like a default system?
I say we're an extremely exclusive retirement system that has open arms to everybody. Okay. So, yes.
Is there a specific code in the PERL that discusses that piece, that the certificated, if it's not certificated, then PERS covers it?
I'm sure that there are several. Off the top of my head, I do not know them.
If you could get that,
Yeah, I'm writing
and then,
myself a note.
yes,
yeah.
STRS, because we brought this up to STRS a couple weeks or so ago, and she was requesting us to get that code.
Okay. How long ago was this? Oh, so our new legislative affairs division chief is Marianne Ashley, who used to be STRS' person. So I was hoping it was her, so I could just give her a hard time about it. Okay. All right. Okay. I will try to find your answer, but it probably won't be while I'm sitting here. Okay, so the other topic I was going to talk about a little bit was divestment. So it's super exciting. So I'm not sure how much you know about divestment. The big divestment bill this year was what's called thermal coal, which is it wasn't my bill, so I can't speak super authoritative about it, but in general, thermal coal is coal that's used specifically to generate electricity, so you're lighting it on fire. And so the bill attempts to require PERS and STRS to divest its pension fund from companies that make money on thermal coal. So kind of two questions on this is, hey, doesn't the PERS board have investment, sole authority over its investments? The answer is yes. Then why are they passing a bill? Super good question. So Prop 162 from 1992, it basically established the sort of independence and control over the system for the PERS and STRS boards and other retirement boards also. And on investments and divestments in particular, it specifically says that the legislature can pass laws telling us what to invest in or not invest in, but that ultimately the decision is with our board. And so in exercising that authority, the legislature and the governor signing the legislation has chosen things like Iran energy sector because of the nuclear program there, the Sudan for human rights abuses in the past, South Africa, Northern Ireland, legislation in the past that wasn't signed dealing with guns, tobacco. So in this case, it's thermal coal under the theory that climate change needs to be addressed and that thermal coal is making climate change, I guess, I'm not sure making it worse, although climate change itself is, I'm not sure if that's considered a good or a bad thing. We want it to change back to the way it was, I think. So the bill was sponsored or authored by the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Pro Tem, Kevin De Leon from Los Angeles, and enjoyed significant support from the environmental community, and is sort of a more peripheral aspect of a larger movement towards divesting pension funds, including public pension funds, from fossil fuels and businesses related to fossil fuels. And so the bill, now that it's signed, because the CalPERS board still has sole authority over its investment and investment decisions, now has to follow a process where we identify companies that are in our portfolio that make money on thermal coal, and then we reach out to them and talk to them about whether they want to continue doing that. And if we, through fiduciary analysis and financial analysis, decide that divesting from those companies makes sense for our pension fund, then we do that. But it's a whole process that starts with the legislation and moves forward. And we will certainly see more divestment bills, probably more dealing with environmental things, but also with more societal issues. I know that with STRS, which was the gun divestment was a little more of an issue a couple, 3 years ago because of the Sandy Hook. At PERS, we divested voluntarily without legislation from guns that are illegal in California. But divestment as a general issue is the legislature has the authority to pass laws and tell PERS and STRS what to do with its money, but at the same time, the investment boards at the retirement funds have the right to not do that if it doesn't make sense for the pension fund, because ultimately the pension system has a responsibility to manage the money wisely, be responsible, and be able to provide benefits. And if you divest from things that destroy the portfolio, you can't provide the benefit. So that's kind of the tension going on. Any questions on that? Okay. I'm putting you to sleep now. Okay. So the last thing I was going to talk about was the Reed DeMaio pension initiatives, which are always exciting, never ending. So they introduced in June a very sweeping initiative that would have impacted both new or future new hires and existing employees, potentially fairly significantly, by giving local governments, local agencies, new broad powers to impact public pensions and benefits for employees. They have said that they have abandoned that effort and reintroduced two new initiatives in October. One is a scaled-down version of the June version called the Voter Empowerment Act. And this new version appears to be more limited towards new hires, new employees after January 1st, 2019. And the other is a kind of a new angle on it, and specifically capping employer contribution rates as a percentage of salary for new hired employees, again, after January 1st, 2019. So it was introduced in October, the two new initiatives, and then they were amended about 3 weeks later, which they're allowed to do under the sort of amended initiative process that's new this year. They amended it to, they had a definition of new employee that was a little confusing, but meant to be fairly strict, in that anyone hired after January 1st, 2019 was considered a new employee, regardless of whether you'd been a public employee at some other agency for a long time. And so they replaced that definition with the PEPRA new member definition, which is a lot more nuanced, and some of you have a little more experience with, and how it can be interesting to implement. And so in that, they have changed the dynamic for their initiatives pretty significantly with the new definition, because now someone who's been a public employee for a long time, or at least before January 1st, 2019, will be able to move between employers without triggering the more severe aspects of these initiatives. And so the immediate impact of both of them will be much slower, in the same way that our PEPRA populations have grown slowly over time, rather than immediately on January 1st, 2013, everyone who got hired became PEPRA, which is not what happened. And so this would be the same sort of dynamic. So in terms of timelines, the two initiatives are currently being in the title and summary process. So the LAO and Department of Finance will put out a fiscal analysis, which will be a very high-level overview with some very sort of broad ranges for numbers in terms of how much it could cost or how much it could save. That'll happen in the next couple weeks, and then the title and summary we're expecting is in the first or second week of December. And then after that, the proponents, this is Mr. Reed and Mr. DeMaio, have said that they will only move forward with one, and that's going to depend on how favorable the title and summary is for the two different measures. So they say they're going to move forward with one. We'll see. Up till now, over the past 2 to 4 years, in particular, this group of people have had some political challenges in raising money and moving forward with an actual signature gathering campaign. I am not challenging them to do so. So we'll see. If once they get approved for actually gathering signatures, they'll have 6 months to do that. But if they want to get on the November ballot, they need to move a little faster than that, and they'll probably need to turn in their signatures after about 4 or 5 months at the most of signature gathering. And those depend on how fast counties want to count. That's a whole separate process, which we aren't even close to. So if they move forward and it looks like they're funded and they're getting signatures, you can imagine that there will be significantly more discussion about the provisions of whichever one is moving forward, what that might mean for PERS and other retirement systems, school employers in particular. I will note that because they're using the PEPRA new member definition for their definition of new employee, for school employers, so for classified employees and for teachers also, that move between schools, that as long as they don't have more than 6 months break in service, that they're not going to trigger the provisions if they have membership that predates 1/1/19. So interesting. But it's at this point, we're just sort of waiting for them for the title and summary to be released, and then we'll see what they do over the Christmas break. And then if they're really into it, I'm assuming in January they'll be gathering signatures, and grocery stores and Targets will be not safe places to go. All right. So I think that's all I have, unless David had more. Is there any questions?
We do have one question
Okay.
from the CF email box.
Great.
Is there going to be a joint STRS PERS process for AB 963? We already have an employee who wants to move from STRS to PERS retroactive to the date of hire, which was 1992.
Well, I can say very authoritatively, I am really not the person to talk to about that. That sounds like a membership or an enrollment issue. I don't know. I know that I don't have any idea what that question really even means.
So I'm gonna ask the individual from the Los Angeles Community College District to be able to clarify his question.
Sure.
And then what we'll do is when we bring the panel back up, we'll hopefully all have some input then.
Okay.
And we can try to help him with that inquiry.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Excellent.
So we'll go ahead at this point and move on to the CalPERS enhancements. I'd like to welcome Tim to our meeting.
Hello, everyone. My Little Pony is not a father's friend at night. And I'm a little sad that Dave Lamoureux chose to leave because he asked me to tell a joke. How do you liven up an accountant's party? Invite an actuary? However, after that last presentation, I think the real answer should be a legislative affairs representative to liven up an account party. So, all right. So what are we doing here in December? We have another big release scheduled for mid-December. There are some pretty big changes. So this is one of our biggest releases that we've had in a while, and I'm here to kind of go through some of the changes for you. First, this may only impact very few of you, especially if you have a district that's very, very small, or if you're a charter school that's very, very small. We are doing an enhancement in CalPERS underneath the payroll schedule page so that you can identify if there are 0 employees to have reportable earnings for. Today, you may have a division or a district where there are no employees who've worked that period of time and therefore no earnings to report. If we don't get a reported payroll report against that payroll schedule, it generates the assessment for late payroll fees. You contact us and we waive it. So now, and like I said, this probably impacts only a very small group of you, but if you are one of those districts who are quite small, there will be a mechanism for which you can identify this is a pay period for which I have no employees or no compensation to report. So the next one, add the ability to search for posted records by participant. I know this is one of those questions that I receive a lot of times with the new enhancement that we did, where you can now, through the left-hand navigation side, search for all outstanding payroll records in an either error or suspended status for one participant. You put in the person's name, it gives you everything's error. We now have the ability for you to quickly identify it by both valid and errored records. So again, you would still use that left-hand nav link, put in the person's CalPERS IDs, but within the top panel, it will actually give you more filter criteria. So if you want to know by a specific fiscal year all the payroll, if you want to see just the valid records, if you want to know what errored records there are, it's a little more of a tool to help you quickly identify payroll associated to one participant. We still don't have the mechanism for you to plug in a whole bunch of CalPERS IDs and get that back. If you're looking for a lot of information, that's where our Cognos report utility comes in hand, and you can generate different reports. So payroll's pretty excited about that one. They're putting a new rule that allows converted special compensation records to be reported as a negative adjustment within a prior period adjustment transaction. When there are multiple converted special compensation records for an earned period, this enhancement will allow the users to reverse out the converted special compensation amounts as a part of a prior period adjustment transaction instead of requiring multiple adjustment transactions to be reported. So we will now allow that to go through. I know they are looking to enhance some of the special compensation adjustment rules as well. When we converted over much of your special compensation using the legacy system, it came over as none, and no pay rate identified. And I know now our system currently requires you to provide a pay rate when reporting special comp, either both the positive or the negative values. So now if it is a negative adjustment and it's associated to a zero pay rate from a legacy perspective, we will allow that special compensation to be reported against any other pay rate that was reported at the same period of time. So it hopefully will help you when you're going through and making corrections for historical legacy data, specifically to special comp that's not associated to defined pay rate. So we're trying to figure out ways to help reduce the amount of calls and errors that you receive. The next one, this one is one that actually came from this meeting per request. Someone asked, can we do retroactive salary adjustments and retroactive special compensation adjustments for our retired annuitants? Now, I don't know why you really care about your retired annuitants that much for reporting retro salary adjustments, but we are now going to allow you to use the same transaction types for retired annuitants. Before, the only transactions you could use were either the EPN for earned period, no contributions, or PPN for prior period, no contributions. But if you do have a retired annuitant and you want to do a retro salary and you want to be able to do it for one record spanning multiple periods of times, we now will allow that to happen without having to report contributions. So I know that's something that people have asked to be able to do retros for retired annuitants. So see, we are listening. Slowly, but we're listening. At the very end. Very end. There's also new validations not allowing payroll to span multiple employer rates and member rates. I've talked about this a lot when reporting retro salary adjustments. If you are going to do one record that has a span period, January through December, one of the things that we wanted you to do initially is to verify if there were any member rate changes or employer rate changes. Maybe they were miscellaneous and they moved to safety, and then break those records out, because before we would just allow it to post and there could be a difference in the member contributions amount if it covered multiple rates, or if there was a leave of absence in between your span of time and you didn't catch that. We're now implementing business rules so those transactions will error out if we identify either a member or employer rate change during the pay period or a classification change if they went from miscellaneous to safety. So those are some of the new validations and business rule changes we have. Anybody like golden handshakes? Golden handshakes? No? Well, I heard there was a problem with county offices and golden handshakes, where if you put the golden handshake at the county office level, it was actually allowing every district under the county also to qualify for those golden handshakes. And so, when they go to retire, there's been some corrections and it's causes a whole bunch of adjustments. Now we actually fixed it so if you are offering a golden handshake specific to the administrative office, the COE, it would only give benefits to that COE group and not have it trickle down like everything else to all your districts. All right, update to UID 150 to allow a member category to display specific divisions. UID 150 is the enrollment page where you enroll people. Francis, I know this is going to help you because you were the one that asked for this. Before, if you were a county office and you were doing enrollments for districts who have safety plans, the drop-down within the member category would only show miscellaneous. It wasn't pulling in the safety member category because technically you are not the contract holder for that safety plan. The district is. And so it didn't recognize you as able to identify those groups. Now, instead of having it at the county office level as a contract holder, if you are the enrollment data owner for your districts, it will actually recognize all contracts that district is associated to. So you should be able to now enroll people both into the member and safety plan if you're doing those enrollments online. I believe if you were doing it through file submission, it wasn't having any problems, but there's only like 25 agencies who are doing enrollments via file, so it must be online. So Francis, see, I was listening. Anybody else that impacts? No? Oh, well, fine. All right, what's next here? What do we got? Prevent contact type designations of other. So we've found on many occurrences that people were making their primary contact without system access defined as an other. So it would be like My general primary contact's name is front desk. Well, front desk doesn't have a system access. Therefore, front desk cannot receive our generated notices that go to them, nor can they be a system administrator. So unfortunately, front desk was causing problems at enrollment time. Because some of our enrollment has back-end triggers that actually kick off notices and documents, there's notifying employers of information. Not all of them are going out right now, but we did have some back-end triggers to do validation at time of enrollment in case we had to notify anybody of something. And by having front desk there without a address or a preferred method of communication, our system was kind of confused. And so all of a sudden you would get this unique error. We have actually cleaned out all the others who were listed as a primary contact. So now nobody with other should be a primary contact. And we will not allow you to define an other as a primary contact. So if you truly have a executive official who just wants to put their name in there, not provide us with their CalPERS ID or SSN, then they will not be able to be the primary contact. They really will have to have the secured information, either the CalPERS ID or SSN. Exciting stuff, I see. Enhanced business rules for correcting an enrollment event where payroll has been posted. Here is the flip side to being able to report payroll when they cross member categories. On the back side, when payroll was reported for, say, 2 years, people were going back retroly and switching a miscellaneous person to a safety category. Well, that comes with the new benefit provisions, and it comes with a different member rate, but it's not kicking off an adjustment to payroll. So we are having payroll posted, and basically a full member category could be underfunded if you've been reporting payroll at a 7% rate and then go back and change it to safety at 9% rate. So there are new validations in place that will come in preventing you from doing an enrollment change correct event historically if there's been posted payroll. Either A, you're going to have to back out all the payroll, then correct the appointment to safety, and then re-report so we have the right provisions and rates applied. Or if the person just changed, the actual way to do it is do an add new and make them effective with a new effective date as safety going forward prospectively. A lot of times that's what the intent was, is that they became safety and they really should have had a date of, say, today. But we were finding as people were just correcting it and making it all the way back without recognizing that could play into their benefit provisions. Again, that's only for those agencies who contract for safety. Last but not least, the wonderful arrears invoices. They are now actually, because I know a lot of employers depend on a receivable invoice to justify making payments, and a lot of times you have to have something in hand that identifies it. Not only are we going to provide the name on the arrears receivable, but the name is also going to be printed on the admin fee associated to the arrears receivable. So you'll be able to start identifying that as well. And I hope, there you go. And I hope the new arrears panel on the billing and payment summary screen is becoming useful as well, because that was a big, huge change to do it on the 561.
The detail, which is great.
Yes. You're welcome. So see, we're making progress. Anybody here go to the Ed Forum? Can I see Ed Forum hands? Was it fun? Did you guys have a good time? Anybody karaoke? No? At the Ed Forum, I did do 2 presentations. One of the presentations I provided, and I also provided last meeting here, was regarding our payroll errors, how to fix the most common received level 1 errors, along with how to export your XML file into an Excel doc. It's a little bit prettier in this new functionality, and the paper is a lot better quality than what I handed out last time. So I did bring examples. If you want to take some, I have some of these for you. I'll be here. And then also creating a payroll adjustment report, how to convert your regular report into an adjustment report, the steps needed. So I also have those. I have some of the old versions and some of the prettier Ed Forum versions. We are working to basically update the CalPERS technical resources page to hopefully house those documents so they'll be available online. But for right now, you're still my only excluded group that I like the most, so you guys get the privilege of having these handouts. At the Ed Forum, I think some of the better topics that we had was around identifying contact types and some of the dependencies. I know I've talked about that a little bit here before, but just again stressing the fact, please make sure you go in and constantly update your contact types, listing who the primary should be. We are working more diligently to find out where the triggers for forms are and how they're getting sent to people. I know there is a fix in the December release to ensure that if you are one of those people, you don't get spam mail with like 100 emails in one day. It's supposed to be only kicking off one notice per specific form. So if you have in December 100 people retire, you're not going to get 100 emails, hopefully. That's why we really pushed for this December release. The billing and payment summary page has some changes. I know our financial office has asked me routinely to come in here and stress the importance, the benefits, their requests to please have you migrate to EFT payments instead of checks. They don't understand why that's such a hard thing to sell, and I keep telling them it's not your guys' choice. I think most people here would like to pay by EFT, but there is a higher power that's saying no. They want to know why there's a higher power saying no, because really EFT payments allows you to pinpoint a specific receivable, make the payments against that. You can even future date it if you're going on vacation, if you're doing one receivable at a time. We are working to fix it to have multiple receivables at a time go future dated. I'm working with them on that. Because some of the questions we have, especially with GASB 68 coming out, is when we reconcile our payments against the applied contributions that were reported, we're coming up with credits, or we're coming up still short on some of our rate plans. Well, a lot of times it's because people are either still, for whatever reason, using the old 626, and that's not helpful because it doesn't give us the receivable IDs, or they're just giving us a check for $5 million and nothing associated to it. So when we get a check for $5 million, I can't put it in my bank account, but they need to know how to define it. And so EFT gives you a more efficient and effective way of doing that. So if you are having trouble getting your board or executive people to approve EFT, maybe you want to have them reach out to our controller to have them identify why. I know I've been pushing stuff, so. These are some of the things I need to go back and tell Fine OY, because they just don't know why people are not hopping on that party train at EFT. Anything else? I mean, right now it's kind of like your opportunity. I promised David I could fill an hour's worth of time. I'd love to dance, but I'd probably hobble along here. So, there weren't a lot of questions at the forum. It was kind of, I know Brad, maybe you can concur, but it seemed a little bit subdued this year. There weren't a lot of hot topics other than able to reconcile and some of the employer rates. But is there any other concerns, questions you guys may have? Changes to my CalPERS you can think of? Any requests? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Sorry, David, I tried. Oh, Vina.
Okay, I just have some questions.
Okay.
First one is, when you were talking about retirees, that you will allow retirees retro salary increases to be reported. I thought I heard you said without contributions.
Right, because retired annuitants never have reported contributions.
No, but when we give them a retro for, oh, you mean only when they get on a retiree salary?
Yes.
Okay. I thought when they have prior and all.
No,
Okay.
because if they're prior.
Because sometimes, you know how they get a retro on prior to retirement and all. So we still will have to do that piece.
Yes. While they were active, as an active member, we
And
still
now
need
they're
contributions,
retired,
but as a
yeah.
retired annuitant,
Okay.
no contributions.
I wanted to clarify that. And then on your area where we assign on the contact area for access, what kind of access a person can have, I didn't get a chance, I was in here for a while, to check, is there a GASP also access there?
Yep.
To give GASP?
There
Okay,
is.
I wanted to, since I was here, some people asked me and I want to check that. And one other thing, when we are on your system on the payroll screen or something, where we see the payroll record, all the information, sometimes we need to print it, but it cuts off the information. Can we have that print option in there on the screen so it can fit to the page? Like when we try to print sometimes some of your print screen, it will cut off, and it has something how your screen is set up.
I will have to ask our general guru
Okay.
because it's probably part of the HTML code that they use to build the website.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a setting that you have specifically when you do a right-click print screen, if you can formulate it that way, or if truly printing a screen from my CalPERS, we need to have like other websites have where there's a print page button. If it is defined in the HTML web code that, you know, regardless of how you choose a print, it always is going to cut it off, then maybe we can look at enhancing my CalPERS to provide
I
that
don't know
print
if other
screen.
people have this problem or it's our, like when we print the screen, it cuts off the, you get complete? Okay.
So maybe right click, but I can test it, and if it's some settings on your end, I can find out what those settings are and share
Okay.
with you.
Thank you.
Regarding some of the contact types, what I shared was we do have the new arrears administrator contact type. This is the person who's the direct contact for arrears determination receivables. They're the one that is assigned to receive any communications, and our membership staff should start utilizing that person for determination questions. I know that's a shift in their work load, is having a defined person, because normally they just call who's ever on the form. So I've been working with Emily to make sure staff use, if we have an arrears administrator defined, that's who their staff would contact in lieu of whoever's on that initial form. So we're having you now define who you want CalPERS to communicate to when it comes to arrear determinations and invoices. The other one is delegated authority. Some people ask me what delegated authority is, and this is used more for the benefits perspective. Who can assist employer originated and local safety applications for health, I believe, or for disability. We have contract service actuary. Now this one, nobody knows what it's for, to be honest. I try to reach out to our actuaries and they say they don't use it, our contract services doesn't use it. But I think we're gonna start trying to identify contract documents that may kick off actuarial workflows and start assigning it to that identifier. And then the replacement benefit fund admin person, benefits ask that employers start using that so they can clearly identify who is versed in the program and capable of initiating and approving the agency's payment of the replacement benefit fund invoices. So those are some new contact types. All right, any other questions? No? Well, have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Gobble till you wobble.
Thank you so much. So now we're at the portion of our agenda where we'll have our panel discussion. We have CalPERS subject matter experts that are here to answer questions that should arise. I'd like to go ahead and read some of the questions that we have from the email box, the SEAC email box. Perhaps that may be able to be helpful to you as well for questions. And so any of our CalPERS staff, if you have the answer, please feel free to stand up, and David will take you the microphone so we can read the information into the teleconference so that they can hear as well. So a certificated employee who elected PERS in 2008, this is a scenario, retired 2011, came back to work at the same district in 2011 as a retiree. Now PERS employee working in a certificated program, position, currently being reported as a non-member to STRS. However, the employee now qualifies for STRS membership. STRS is requesting us to appoint employee. How should this employee be reported? Thank you, Ryan.
I mean, we'd have to look at the member of the count more closely on that one, but you know, it's more of a STRS reporting question. From the CalPERS side, though, if you sent that ID into or called into the contact center, we could look at it a little bit more closely and make that determination. I just would hate to make a determination without seeing it in front of me.
Very good, and I'll be sure to share this with our contact here at CalSTRS. Another question. Can you tell me if a coaching stipend is reportable as special compensation? Is it reportable in any form?
Hi. So coaching stipend is not an item of special compensation contained in the list in 571A. Therefore, it's not available to your PEPR members either. Coaching stipends we come across often, and we suggest that if you want the compensation to be reported, to establish a pay rate that is on a salary schedule and then report that with the proper earnings for it to be reportable to CalPERS, so long as the person is not already a full-time employee.
Thank you. So I have an email from somebody who's new to CalPERS reporting, and she's listening on the line. She's not sure if she's understanding the 6% that was being discussed. We have a district that gave a one-time off salary schedule bonus last June of 2014-15. So it'd be June 30th. They also have agreed to a 3% increase to the 2014-15 salary schedule to be paid retroactively in December of 2015. This is a total of 7%. I need clarification on the 6% rule and the location on the verbiage in the Pearl.
All right, so the definition of off-salary schedule pay is in 571A, and it does say that it is for payment or negotiated payments in lieu of increases not to exceed 6%. So you can find that in 571A. So if you have a pay increase and off-salary schedule increase that lapse the same period, so they're given in conjunction with each other, and in this instance, you have the off-salary schedule that would put you over the 6%. Only report up to 6%. So if it's 4 and 3, 4 being on the salary and 3 being off salary, report 2% as special compensation. We would accept that.
Okay, and that question came from Calaveras County Office of Education. If you'd like more information, please email our box again, and we'll make sure that we provide it to Lolita so she can give you that section number again. I just want to make sure you're comfortable with the information that was provided. I have one more. Should the shift differential be reported as it is not a regular part of the employee's salary structure? Example, we have employees who get paid shift differential only on certain days due to working over their 8-hour schedule. This is in addition to overtime, which is not reportable.
That is correct. So shift differential should only be reported for those hours in which they're earning the pay within their normal schedule. So if they're receiving a shift differential for hours in excess of their normal schedule, it would not be reportable to CalPERS.
Okay, this is, the question is a COLA, can a COLA be reported as a RSA per fiscal year? We're paying a group of employees a COLA for the period of July 1st, 2014 through November 30th, 2015.
Yeah, that could be reported as a RSA. Only thing I would advise, though, is if the pay rates changed during that period, you'd have to do multiple retro salary adjustments for each pay rate. Does that make sense?
And they're nodding in the room.
Oh, I was just looking over to some of the more experienced reporters to make sure that the way I said it made sense, because I could speak their language, I think.
Okay, we have another question. This is for Tim, my CalPERS enhancement. When will the edit be removed that rejects the uploading of a file that contains a date for a prior period with the incorrect contribution type? Can't it just be an error?
So I believe this is one of the ones where we failed to file because in your September regular earned period, you're reporting an earned period transaction with June dates. I can go back to our team and find out why we have it as a hard code error instead of a level 2 error, which would just kick off and let you correct it online. One of the biggest things, though, is we want to make sure those adjustments, if you're fixing them within our internal system and not also adjusting them within your internal system, you could be putting both systems out of sync. And so we never want to have an opportunity where our information that we have is different than your information, especially even though you know it. 10 years from now, when someone replaces you, they may not know that you made those changes. So I know there have been a number of questions regarding our level 1 errors and some of them, why can't we just make them level 2? And I can definitely take those back. And we can review those as an enhancement.
Very good. And the last question I have here, or statement, is actually whether or not we can email the 2 presentations that Tim did at the Ed Forum. And so I have collected some follow-up items for this group, and I would like to send them to the distribution. I believe my team may have those presentations in PDF, Tim, and we can help with that distribution. We'll work together on that. Okay. So at this time, are there any questions for our panel of subject matter experts from folks here in the room? That's a good sign. We've been obviously very informative, and I appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you. You can go ahead and take a seat. Thank you, CalPERS staff. And so some of the items that I have for follow-up that I'd like to be able just to read out to the group. Our intention is to provide you with this information after this meeting. And so I have Tim's presentation from the Ed Forum. I have the notes that I had today on the actuary, the contributions presentation that I read earlier into record, as well as the 2 sheets that were a PowerPoint that had some figures for your own record and notes, because I know that was quite technical. Also, Tim mentioned a handout that he has on some fine paper. I'd like to see if we can work together to get that out to this distribution group as well. And then the items of legislation that we talked about with Andrew, we'll work with Andrew to provide that information to you based on the input that you guys requested. Is there anything that I'm missing from CalPERS? No? Very good. So now we're at the end of the meeting. I know we're a little bit early, which means you guys will have a little bit longer lunch. There's a couple of items that I wanted to cover with you. One of the things that we're looking at, since this is our final meeting in 2015 here at CalSTRS, next year we'll be back at CalPERS. And the dates that I have thus far for our meetings are February 10th, 2016, May 4th, 2016, August 3rd, 2016, and November 2nd, 2016. And so the meetings will actually switch times. CalSTRS will be in the morning, CalPERS in the afternoon. And that November date is tentative, but we'll make sure that we send them out to you. And so the Office of Stakeholder Relations that manages this meeting is always interested to have your input. As you know, our agenda is based on your input to these meetings. And so whether there's information that you want to have, if you can send those in a timely manner to us so that we can have the right subject matter experts here in the room for you. But moving forward, one of the takeaways that I've gotten from meeting with your group in the last 2 years since I've been the chief here in my office is that I also want to start introducing strategic issues that are coming forward that will be interesting to you, that impacts the work that you do, whether it's a change in program or what have you. I think it's important that we get your feedback as we're looking at items that we'll be giving a presentation to the board as well. And so one of the things that we do is your input is always important to us. My staff has some comment cards here, and it's just a quick survey about our meetings, whether or not you found them to be effective and informational. You can provide us with any input that you have for improvements moving forward. There's always opportunities, of course. And so David will go ahead and hand those out. If you could please take the time to complete that and leave them face down on the table, we would really appreciate it. And then another topic I wanted to introduce today, and it was just because I know that after Halloween, a lot of people start gearing up for the holidays. There's a lot of vacations. I know that your time is valuable. I know that you guys are taking time to be away from your office to be here with us in Sacramento. and the folks that are on the line as well, taking time away from their busy day and trying to multitask, listen to our meeting, and take care of work. And so I wanted to introduce the idea to you that I would create a survey and send it out and ask your input as to whether or not we want to have 4 meetings as we have quarterly, or if we'd like to go to 3 meetings a year. And the reason I say that is that you guys are valuable stakeholders to us. Education and school employees are very important to our board as well as to my office. And I always want to make sure that the meetings that we have are effective, informational, and that you are walking away with the best experience that you can have when you come into contact with CalPERS subject matter experts. And so is that something that you guys would be interested in providing me your feedback on? If I were to send a survey out to the entire group? So the heads are nodding for those on the teleconference. Okay, I just want to make sure that if this meeting is something that you depend on and you like the interaction, we can continue doing them 4 times a year, quarterly. But then again, I'm looking at if it's maybe something different, we do them every 4 months, which would mean that we would meet in February, June, and October. And then as we get closer to the holidays, people have their time off. November, December, and January we would be off. And that way you can balance your schedule a little bit more. So I leave you with that. It's always wonderful to be here with you. Thank you so much for taking your time away from your offices. And I wanted to wish you a safe and happy holiday. And the Office of Stakeholder Relations is always available to you, whether it's through my email box, rita.gallardo, GALLARDO, at calpers.ca.gov, or my staff, David Takearts or Sunshine Dunphy. And so thanks again to the CalPERS staff for being here today and providing us your expertise. And have a great day. Enjoy your lunch.